I am thrilled to introduce you to our speaker for today's session, Elise Luebbering. Elise is the founder of Evergreen Media, a marketing consultancy specializing in rural, agricultural, and community-focused brands. She partners with small businesses to lighten loads, clarify their message, and help them show up confidently with marketing foundations that are simple, strong, and built to last. Elise grew up on her family's farm in Curryville, Missouri, and now lives with her husband, Ben, and two sons on their generation family farm in central Missouri. She brings both professional expertise and a genuine understanding of the rhythms and realities of agriculture life. Welcome, Elise. I am so excited to learn from you today and hear the expertise that you can share with our audience. So I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Madison. It is a pleasure to be here today, and I'm excited to dive in. I will say it's going to be a pretty quick crash course. The content that they asked me to cover is pretty intense, so we're going to jump right into it. Hopefully, my screen share works, and we will get right in. So, I am Elise, as Madison said. I kind of dabble in all kinds of different marketing things, but one thing that I'm very passionate about is kind of the direct to consumer world. So we're gonna jump right into things. And like Madison said, if you have any questions, I'm gonna go pretty quickly, but if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat, or you can always send me an email afterwards if you have a specific question about something that we talked about. So the kind of concept that we're going to talk about today is the price taker versus brand builder, and how to become that brand builder in this direct-to-consumer marketing world, as it is kind of becoming a big thing right now, where farmers and producers are taking very much value-added products straight to market and straight to sale to local consumers. So with that, we're going to jump right in. We're going to first off talk about the differences between price taker versus a brand builder. I'm going to throw a bunch at you, but like Madison said, this is going to be in the follow-up resources later on. So feel free to revert back to this. Hopefully this isn't glitchy or anything. So the primary differentiator between a price taker versus a brand builder is competing on cost versus competing on value. So the pricing mindset for that, competing on cost mentality is what is my neighbor charging. While this is still a factor that you should consider, the brand builder mindset is really asking yourself, what is this worth to my buyer? You need to set those prices based on the value that you're delivering, not just the value of the product itself. So that is a big differentiator between the two, but there's several other kind of categories that they kind of fall into here. A big one is the customer relationship being very transactional versus relational. Whenever you're competing on value, it's extremely important to really work hard to build a relationship with those customers, relate to them in a way that they really get. What are they caring about whenever they're making those purchases? And we're going to really dive into that more here in a little bit. And lastly, on this page is their marketing approach. A price taker probably has minimal strategy. They're heavily relying on foot traffic and that word of mouth. Now, don't get me wrong, these are important too. However, a brand builder, kind of in the name, they're very intentional and consistent in building that brand and sharing that story across all platforms where they're present, whether that's in person, online, and everywhere in between. So, furthermore, here, a response to a slow week. If you're really competing on cost, your initial instinct might be to, okay, well, let's drop the price and see if we can get some more people in. While this could be a strategy to run a special, it's also really important that you look at your bottom line. Are you making money on it in the first place? Can you afford to drop $2 less per pound just to try and, pick up traffic? Maybe, maybe not. The brand builder is going to do their best to reactivate buyers. So maybe that's by sending a text or an email. Maybe it's posting some more on social media. Maybe they're going to develop a pre-order offer or a subscription package. Any of those things that kind of reaches out to buyers and reminds them that you exist, and kind of ropes them back in and hopefully kind of reignites their excitement about the products that you offer. Second here is the product presentation. This is a big one for certain buyers. How kind of aesthetically pleasing, as some would say, is your packaging? Is it consistent and cohesive across the labels that are on your packages? Maybe it's the signage at the farmer's market or at your farm stand. And then also how you show up online and in other places. A price taker may not have much of this, may not put as much value behind the presentation, but this is a big thing often in this world for certain buyers especially. And then lastly, this is a big one, the mindset about their farm. Are they treating it like a business that is marketed like one, or are they just kind of winging it, if you will? So I grow honey and I hope people buy it, or I run a business that grows honey and I treat it like one, I market it like one. So these are all factors that kind of set these things apart and things to kind of think about as you really dive into this direct-to-consumer world. So how do we get there? Before we can start marketing, there's some things that we need to really place some intentional thinking into, and that is to identify your ideal buyer, master value-based pricing, and audit the customer journey. And we're going to run through each of these very quickly, and I'll provide some resources along the way as well as we get into it. So step one is really to identify your ideal buyer. I'll be the first to say I've dabbled in this direct-to-consumer world quite a bit for our own businesses, but also for others. And this is a big thing. You really have to know your people. You have to know their motivation behind purchasing your product, what draws them to your product, what's their kind of mindset behind buying, and what are those different factors that go into them ultimately deciding to make a purchase, to tell people about you, to come back and buy more. So a couple things to note here. I will be the first person to say that not everyone is your customer, and that is okay. Don't have hurt feelings over that. That's just how it is in any retail kind of space. You have to know that not everyone's going to be your customer and be okay with it. And then secondly, kind of the same mindset of if it's everybody's job, it's nobody's job. The same goes here. If you are trying to market to everyone, you're marketing to no one. You really need to kind of tailor your marketing message. Maybe it's the platforms that you use, the tone that you use. They should all flow from who this ideal buyer is and their motivation behind purchasing. So how do we identify an ideal buyer? I'm going to throw 4 different very specific examples and kind of some different characteristics of each your way. If any of these stick out to you and you're like, that's my buyer, I know it is, feel free to steal this. This will hopefully help you kind of tailor your messaging and help you show up in the places that are most appropriate for your ideal buyer. So my first example here is the health conscious parent. So this person wants to feed their family well. They want to know exactly where their food comes from. They are going to ultimately respond the most to transparency. So maybe that is when the product was processed, maybe it's how you operate your farm, maybe it's animal welfare, or added ingredients that happen at the processing stage, whatever that is, this ultimately motivates this buyer. And one thing to especially note here is this person's going to drive out of their way. They're going to go out of their way from the convenience standpoint and really look for the product that they know, that they trust, and that they are willing to feed their families. The second is the gift shopper. So this one is a person who's looking for something local. Maybe it's something that is packaged very beautifully. It's something extra special, super value added, that is probably for someone else. So they're going to be more motivated by that really pretty packaging that you have, or a super nice Instagram post that they happen to see in their feed. That the story behind this really matters to this buyer. So that stamp that says locally grown in Jefferson City, Missouri, that is going to be really important to this buyer. The third one is the values aligned local. So this person is doing everything that they can to keep their hard-earned dollar in the local economy. And they want to support the real people doing real work in rural Missouri, or in rural America. So this person is very much dependent on that relationship that you build with them. They're going to be less price sensitive than you'd expect. They are buying that relationship as much as the product. They want to support somebody local, and they will be the first person to tell others about your business and about your product without even being asked. And then lastly is the bulk buyer. Maybe it's a wholesale buyer. It's like a restaurant, someone who wants to stock their freezer with a lot of product. Maybe it's a small grocer down the road. The person that is doing the buying for this type of business is looking for that reliable supply at a price that works for their business. This is that more business to business transaction buyer that you still have to consider. And I want to say this is a good point. You're going to have more than one ideal buyer probably. So there may be, 1 to 3 buckets that your buyers kind of fall into. And it's an important and a really kind of key point to really make sure you kind of tailor your messaging in those different areas. The way that you talk to this bulk buyer is going to be much different than how you talk to maybe it is the gift shopper who wants something really pretty to share with someone special. So those are the 4 that I've kind of provided today. I could think of countless others right now, and I'm sure that you could too as you kind of think through your own business. But I want to kind of walk through what's the best way to actually know your ideal buyer. So my best advice is to look at your customers now. If you are new to this, you don't have customers yet, think about the person that you want to be buying your products and kind of put them into different categories. So if you're kind of looking at your customer list, I want you to name your top 5 buyers. Real people that you've seen, that you've had pick up from your farm, whatever. Make a list and then kind of write down what they have in common. So maybe it's age range, maybe it's how they live, maybe it's where they live, maybe it's what they talked about when they were buying, what kind of motivated them that day. And then ultimately, your ideal buyer is going to be found in this overlap. So they're going to have some shared values, some shared motivation behind their purchases, and so on. And this is extremely, extremely helpful whenever you actually dive into marketing to know how you're kind of, who you're gearing your messaging towards and what they truly care about. So next up, once you kind of know your buyer, then you've got to start setting prices. I am not a master of this. It says master value-based pricing. We're going to use that loosely, but I'm excited to share a few tips here and then a really incredible resource that I hope will be extremely valuable to you guys. So the biggest question that you have to ask yourself is, what is this worth to the buyer? And that's how you set your prices. Whenever you're thinking about pricing, if someone cares that your quart of honey costs $5 more than it costs at Walmart, if they care about the price, they're going to go buy at Walmart, right? They're going to care about the story if they're making that purchase from you. So that's something that you really need to heavily consider in your pricing. It's not always about the convenience of picking up a product whenever you're already at the grocery store getting XYZ, but it's about the story, it's about the quality that you bring to the table, and that transparency and trust. They know ultimately where their food comes from, and they place a lot of value on that. So one of the best tools that I have found is this Cornell Meat Price Calculator. I'm going to hopefully pull it up. Hopefully you all can see this. So this is a free tool online. You'll get these slides and you can check it out and really dig into it. I hope you do, because it is incredibly, it kind of is just a very almost, I don't want to say mindless, but it takes some of the headache out of really putting thought behind the pricing. So whenever you jump in here, I'm going to just name this. You will have to go in. It'll prompt you for all the information that it needs, which is lovely. And then you can go through here, select what you're selling. Now, I will say this is meat oriented, but not to say if you are selling flowers or nursery products or whatever, I would still encourage you to look into this, because there are some different points in here that you may not necessarily consider whenever you're figuring pricing. So whenever you get in here, it allows you to do all kinds of stuff. First being, you're going to input your production costs and then how much you want to be making on the actual production piece. And then whenever you are done with that, you go over to the processing piece, input all those costs. Don't forget the things that we don't think about as farmers, right? Okay, so I spent an hour driving 2 finished heifers to the butcher shop. Well, that trucking wasn't free, right? Yeah, we may not consider that an expense, but it definitely is something worth noting. And then lastly, is the marketing. Yes, marketing is not free. Whether you are doing it solo, you're doing it yourself, or you're hiring someone else to do it, it still costs money. So definitely consider that whenever you're looking at your pricing. So whenever you actually complete all this, then you can go in here. Maybe you already have an idea of what prices you have set. So you can go in here and input all those things, and then it is ultimately going to spit out what kind of big picture you're looking at, and then hopefully give you some kind of scope to kind of evaluate and see, okay, I need to be charging more here. I need to have more profit in this space, whatever. So I hope this is a valuable piece, a little resource for you to use. I know it has been for us. Okay, hopefully I'm back. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so that is all I have to touch on the pricing piece. Like I said, I am no expert, and that is extremely unique to whatever market you're in, whatever area you're in. But those are all different things to think about, and an incredibly valuable tool that I encourage you to look into. Next up is auditing the customer journey. So this is ultimately how a customer will find you, how they build confidence in the products that you have, how they trust you, how they pay you, how does that transaction take place, and not just how they pay you, but how do they actually get the product. If you're not face to face at a farmer's market, how do they pick up their meat, or how do they pick up their flowers? Do you deliver? Do you ship? All those things are important. And then lastly, what makes them come back, and hopefully tell others about your business too. So we're going to really dive into these different pieces, and this is kind of where a lot of the like actionable things take place as far as what you can do for your own business now and from a marketing standpoint. So we're going to dive right in. So first step is how a customer will find you. So there are some different manners here. One, it can be in person, whether that's at a farmer's market. Maybe you have a roadside stand promoting what goods you offer. Maybe you've hosted some farm events or open houses, and then word of mouth kind of falls under that as well. Second is where they can find you online. So maybe that's your Google Business Profile. This is a free tool. I just want to put in a plug here. They don't pay me to tell you this, but I tell every business I visit with, you should have a Google Business Profile. It is free to use, and it is extremely powerful in legitimizing your business online. Second is social media. So maybe that's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, somewhere else. Maybe it's Facebook Marketplace. Maybe you're making some listings in there to target people locally or in local groups. There are countless local groups in different communities where you can share stuff about your products. And then lastly, local food directories. There are a lot of directories online that really promote this direct-to-consumer thing, especially in recent years. There are so many new ones that I couldn't even touch all of them. I do have one specific one that I know of that I'll share about later. And then lastly, some paid and collaborative efforts. So maybe that's putting some money behind social media posts or building ads. Maybe you're co-marketing with local brands. That's a really great way to kind of partner with other brands in your community that are doing the similar work as you are. So maybe it's two products that complement each other. Maybe it's putting a gift basket together at Christmas time, and so on. Local media and food writers, that's a really good one, and reaching out to some of those connections. And then lastly, lots of Chamber of Commerce memberships around the state, and then also agritourism networks where you can really branch out and hopefully get your name out there. Okay, so with all of that, I have to say, you have to be very diligent in discerning what platforms and locations you should show up. Not every space is a good fit for every business, and I would encourage you to very much heavily discern where you want to invest your time, your talents, your energy, and so on, because all of these things take time. All of them are gonna, expire some of your mental energy and so on. Next is what makes potential customers trust you. So there are kind of three buckets that this fall under in my mind, and that is visual credibility, which is what shows up in your packaging in person. Maybe it's how your product got delivered. Maybe it's how they picked up your product, so on, what that looked like. Maybe it's your booth and display design, your product photography online. That is a big one that I'm passionate about, really showing good images of your product. That is such a powerful tool to really showcase what you have to offer. And then lastly, having a consistent visual identity. What does that mean? That means if you have a logo, use it effectively. Show up in those different places consistently so that a customer sees that and they're like, oh, I know this business. I bought this from them before, or I heard so-and-so talking about them. Secondly is social proof. So do all you can to ask for Google reviews, Facebook recommendations. You can get like written testimonials at your booth or on your storefront. And then lastly, user-generated content. So maybe it's asking some of your customers like, hey, take a picture of this whenever you cook it and tag me in it or something. Maybe you offer a discount or a special coupon for those that do that. That kind of social proof is extremely powerful in other potential customers seeing your actual customers using their product and using your product and enjoying it. And then lastly, your story and transparency. So developing a really strong farm story that really transparently kind of tells about your business, about your farm, about your family. That ultimately kind of creates the foundation for transparency in this space. Behind the scenes content. So share a little bit of sneak peeks, what you're up to on day-to-day things. Certifications and practices. If you have anything that you boast a certain certification, by all means talk about it. And then lastly, showing up with a consistent presence. That is extremely important in really building that trust. Third is how will potential customers pay you? And like I said earlier, not just pay you, but how do they pick up? How do they get their product and so on if it's not a face-to-face transaction? So one thing I want to mention here, there are like countless resources online for places that you can like put together an order form and invoice. There are so many different ways that you can accept payment. Whatever you do, make sure that it is extremely clear how customers can pay you, what options you offer, especially if that's in person, then they don't have to awkwardly ask you if they don't know you, like, do you accept Venmo or would you take a check? That sort of thing. This ultimately reduces that friction. It doesn't require a customer to ask you how they will pay or how they will pick up. So regardless of how this process works for you, be very clear in sharing that. It just really helps, like I said, reduces that friction and hopefully gets you getting sales, right? So now that we've kind of dug into all of those things, this is whenever you can start marketing. You kind of have a plan for your ideal buyer, how you're going to target messaging there. You have a plan for pricing. And I will say pricing is adjustable, right? You may need to change your price in a few months after you get started, whether that's higher or lower. And then lastly, that customer journey, which is ultimately where we spend a lot of time in the marketing realm. So some different places to market. I will put some actionable kind of ideas out there for you. Hopefully these are helpful if you haven't thought of them. And then after today, I will actually share, I know Madison has it ready to share these different resources for like some action plans over the next 90 days, over the next 12 months for how you can actually implement some of these tools that we use in marketing. So they're kind of 4 buckets that these fall under for me. The first being social media, which is where I spend a lot of my time doing marketing work. So whether that's Facebook, there are different places to be involved on social media. So especially on Facebook, you can have a business page, you can be involved in local community groups, you can make listings on Facebook Marketplace, you can have paid ads, all of those things. You can have Instagram, there's TikTok if you like the video space. I will say TikTok is less local feeling probably for some, but that's not to say you won't create a really cool local community on TikTok with your loyal customers. And then lastly, one that people don't really think about having a presence on, but that is Pinterest. So if you grow like flowers, maybe you have a nursery or greenhouse, maybe you like to share a lot of recipes with your products, that's a great place to show up with content like that, where people are consuming that sort of content. Second is search and local discovery. So once again, that Google business profile is incredibly powerful. And I would encourage, if you do anything after this, I would set up a Google business profile. It is super quick and easy. You don't have to list your address if you don't want people visiting your farm. I know that's a big scary thing for many farms, and rightfully so. I totally get that. But there is a way to like hide that, but still have a presence there. That way, if someone searches your farm name, hopefully that's the first thing that pops up, and they have your phone number there, they have your email there, whatever contact information you choose to display. It's also a great way to gather customer reviews. That directory that I was talking about is localharvest.org. I would check that out. It is a free directory. At least it started as one. I hope it still is. I haven't looked into it very recently. But that kind of helps buyers search locally in their areas and kind of filter for certain things that they're looking for. Missouri Grown, so the Missouri Department of Ag offers that service. That one is not free, but it is relatively cheap, I think, and a great way to kind of get connected with other local Missouri Grown members in the state. And then lastly, county extension and agritourism listings. There are lots of different resources out there for those sorts of things. So under email and text, this is not one that people often think about just because it's a whole nother thing to manage, right? But one kind of plug for this, if you develop an email and text list, that is your contact list that you own. So instead of relying on a Facebook or Instagram algorithm that's going to change every week, you have this list that you have a direct line of contact with. Yes, a lot of people say, I get like hundreds of emails a day. I don't want another one. That's rightfully so. My inbox is very crowded too. I get that. However, that is such a great way to just show up, remind people that you're there. Maybe they don't read all your emails, but you're still showing up regularly and have that point of contact with them. And then in person and in your community. So ways that you can market in person at a farmer's market, that's with your booth presence, your signage, maybe you have sampling, those things. If you have a farm stand or do on-farm sales, that's super awesome. Not everyone has that availability, but that is a really cool thing to do. Once again, you want to show up consistently with your booth presence, with your signage, however that process works on farm. Maybe do farm events and you pick. You turn customers into like that return experience. They want to come back every year for that same experience. Chamber of Commerce, once again, and then co-marketing with other local farms or food businesses. That is such a great way to kind of build community with other farms and also kind of like help each other, like your customers hopefully become their customers and vice versa. So once again, don't pick all of these, but these are all kind of ways that you could market to your buyer. Once again, kind of circle back to that. Where does it make sense for you to be spending your time and energy based on who your buyer is? That's a really important factor to consider, and you should not take lightly. So all of that said, I want to point out here, you can DIY about anything with marketing, and you can also outsource about anything with marketing. So whenever you're kind of discerning your time, your energy, your talents, those things, heavily kind of consider where you can spend your time yourself and where it makes sense to pull someone else in. Whether that is a business, an agency kind of like mine, or maybe that is, maybe it's a high school student who lives down the road who's really good at making TikTok videos and reels. Maybe you kind of source some other help to help you behind the scenes in doing things like that. But I just always want to plug that out there because some people don't even realize all the services that you can track down on the internet for someone else to do for you so that you aren't kind of up a creek alone as far as the long list of marketing goals that you might have. So with that, I don't know if there's been any questions. These will come to you after today. So I hope this will kind of be a solid kind of checklist, thing to work through, and hopefully help you as you audit your customer journey, as you show up consistently and all those things. So with that, I think I have expired all of the time I have. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you, Elise. That was such a deep dive and so inspirational. A lot of good things to take away. I've got my sticky note of things to follow up on after our session today. I am not seeing any questions out here, so I will go ahead and wrap us up this afternoon. So again, Elise, thank you for those incredible insights. To our attendees, thank you for taking the time out of your busy spring schedule to join us. In the chat, I did drop a link to our survey. If you could take just a couple minutes to fill that out, it really helps us to know what type of sessions to continue to bring you and to offer that will help provide value to you and your farming operation. As I mentioned in the beginning, all of these resources, including a recording, Elise's feedback and her resources that she shared, as well as that survey link, will be included in that recap email. So before we go, I do want to go ahead and extend an invitation to you to join us on Tuesday, June 16th. For our next Grow Together session. We'll be joined by FCS Financial Vice President Will Gabbard for a session titled How to Read Your Appraisal. So we'll be pulling back the curtain on how the evaluation process, which is a must attend for any landowner or for those who are looking to purchase real estate in the future. So again, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and I wish you a safe and productive afternoon. Thank you.